Hi, welcome back to the basement. I'm Steve Lewis. You know, it probably won't surprise anybody to hear that one of my favorite things is to get a reissue of a beloved album, provided it's giving me something extra. For example, unreleased bonus tracks or outtakes from the recording sessions. I like to get some liner notes with some history and some dates. Like to get maybe some outtake artwork, maybe rejected album concepts, maybe outtakes from photo sessions for the album covers. I love it when they put out a box set that does a deep dive into an album that I love. Now there's a problem with those box sets, and we'll come to that in a little bit. But there have been some really good ones over the years, some that I've really enjoyed. The gold standard for box set reissues has been the Paul McCartney Archive collection, which started about 10 years ago. Every year, McCartney has put out some of his solo albums as reissues in box set form, maybe one or two albums per year. This year, 2020, we've been promised a super deluxe, super expensive box set reissue of 1997's Flaming Pie album. By the time you see this video, it might already be out. As I'm recording this, the most recent release from the Paul McCartney Archive collection is 1973's Red Rose Speedway. You get this fantastic glossy box with outtakes from the original album cover sessions on front and back. See how thick this thing is? And here's what you get inside. First of all, you get a book called Wings Over Morocco, which includes photos from Wings' trip to Morocco that were used for the inner sleeve of the original album release. These are some of the unused photos from those sessions in Morocco. An entire book of that. You also get this little folio for the Bruce McMouse show, which was a unreleased TV show where this little cartoon mouse would follow Paul McCartney and Wings around. It was kind of a cornball idea, but you get dialogue sheets here. You get reproductions of some of McCartney's drawings, concept drawings for the mouse, and you get the actual unreleased TV program on DVD and Blu-ray. Getting it on both formats is a bit of overkill if you ask me, but it's a great thing to have. Additionally, you get a hardcover book with more photos and a history of this time period in Wings' development and all about the recording of the album. It includes reproductions of promotional items and reproductions of handwritten lyrics. It's an amazing book with a lot of information. And then of course you also get the music. Here you get naturally the original Red Rose Speedway release in higher quality than heretofore. Red Rose Speedway was originally envisioned as a double album, so you get a double album version of Red Rose Speedway. Over here you get some additional outtakes on a third CD with some of the singles from the same time period. And then finally you get a DVD with promotional films for singles from this time period and also some films from Red Rose Speedway songs themselves. So it's an amazing, amazing box set, kind of deep dive thing that I love. And there is a problem with archive sets like this. What's the one thing you don't get in this box set? You don't get the Red Rose Speedway album. You don't get the original experience that the record buyer would have in 1973 when they bought this album. You get all the components, but you don't get them put together in the way they were experienced in 1973. And that's okay. And I don't mind it. But you got to remember that when you get an archive collection, you get a reissue like this, they're taking you one step away from the original experience. It's kind of like when you take an object out of its natural habitat and you put it in a museum. You can learn about it, you can study it, you can see it in ways you never could see it before, but you also can't see it in the way that you originally saw it. So it's worth keeping in mind. It doesn't completely diminish, or greatly diminish even, those archive releases for me, but it is something worth considering, that we're seeing it in a very different way than it was originally intended. With a couple of exceptions that we'll talk about later, the Beach Boys have yet to be subjected to the kind of exhaustive, deep dive, archival reissues that McCartney's back catalog has been subject to. But they have had some really good reissues over the years that have often included bonus tracks. The first re-release of material to include previously unreleased bonus tracks for the Beach Boys was December 1981's 10 Years of Harmony. Now this was a sort of best of the Reprise and CBS years, 1970 to 1980 at the time, and included a whopping 2 bonus tracks. It included a cover version of Frankie Ford's Sea Cruise that had been recorded along with many other oldies in 1976. At the time, they were recording 15 Big Ones. And it also included the outtake San Miguel from the Sunflower period. Now, San Miguel had been pretty exhaustively bootlegged to this point, so I can see why they wanted to get that one out there and sort of counteract the bootleggers. Not sure why Sea Cruise was released. My guess would be that it was probably finished and mixed, so it was an easy thing to throw in. Throwing 2 unreleased tracks on, they realized, made people like me who were completists have to shell out the $9 or whatever it cost in those days for this double album to get these 2 songs. Now, as the 1980s went on, there wasn't much more in the way of archive releases. There were those couple of rarities albums that came out in the early 80s that we talked about in an earlier video, The Beach Boy Vault Cracks Open. The next time the Beach Boy catalog began to be re-released with bonus tracks was in 1990. Now, during this period, everybody was getting rid of their vinyl and switching over to CD. So it was a good opportunity for the record companies to get everybody to buy everything again. And Capitol was no exception. But they did a pretty nice job of it, actually an amazingly nice job. They put out the Beach Boy original albums as twofers. You'd get 2 albums on one disc. For example, one of the first ones, of course, Surfin' Safari and Surfin' USA. Came with nice liner notes, kind of thing I love, with lots of information and dates and background outtake photos from the cover sessions, and they included a few bonus tracks. Here you get Cindy Oh Cindy, Baker Man, and Land Ahoy. Land Ahoy actually had been on one of those earlier vinyl rarities releases in the early 80s. Along with that, they used to put these out sort of 2 at a time, a few months apart. You got Surfer Girl and Shut Down Volume 2, also with bonus tracks. The releases went along, all the twofers. Pet Sounds, of course, being the exception. It was released as a single album with a few extras. It had Hang On to Your Ego. It had, some unreleased backgrounds. There really wasn't a lot of unreleased material on this, but you did get Pet Sounds. One of the more interesting bonus tracks on the re-releases came on the re-release of Smiley Smile and Wild Honey. You got a version of Heroes and Villains that started out very familiar with the Heroes and Villains theme, but then went into this In the Cantina section that nobody had heard before. We'd heard about it, but nobody had heard this before. That it hadn't even been bootlegged at the time. So it was the beginning of hearing some of the Smile stuff, and that was really exciting at the time. And then, of course, they followed up with Friends and 2020 rounding out the Capitol years. We got some really, really nice bonus tracks on these reissues. Now, weirdly, after they finished doing this a few years later, they put these out as single discs and deleted the bonus tracks. So they took a really nice package that they had done, and as Capitol has often done to the Beach Boys, turned it into a shoddy piece of junk. But for a little while, they had a really nice package here. Again, as much as I enjoy the bonus tracks and the extra liner notes, having two albums together on one CD with bonus tracks does kind of detract from the original album experience, the original intent. That's something to keep in mind as you listen to any of these reissues. 1993 saw the first release of a big Beach Boy multi-CD retrospective entitled Good Vibrations, 30 Years of the Beach Boys. This, of course, had all the hits on it, but it had a really high proportion of previously unreleased material. Some of it very good. Even though they kind of plundered the vaults on those reissues, Capitol still had some pretty good stuff in the vaults. And for the first time here, we got a significant portion of what would have been the Smile album, which was really, really exciting and really landmark. We also get a lot of other good outtakes, including Still I Dream of It and It's Over Now, which Brian had recorded in 1977. A couple of great songs. They'd been bootlegged. Here was the first official release. This was pretty exciting stuff. It also included a kind of thing that the Beach Boys had done before and would do increasingly as the years go by, which is to release tracks without vocals and tracks with vocals and no instrumental backing. This had first been done in 1968 on the album Stacco Tracks, where they had taken basically the Beach Boys' greatest hits, stripped off the vocals, and released the backing tracks as an album. And inside you got a little booklet with the music and also the lyrics in case you wanted to play along or sing along. It understandably quite an obscure album. Now, this is not the kind of thing that I'm particularly interested in. For me, I'm not really interested in a remix. If they've taken, if it's an alternate version, that's cool. I really like that. But I don't like remixes. There was a period in the early 80s where they were putting out 12-inch singles of, Blue Jean by David Bowie, remixed by, some famous DJ, or even The Clash remixed by Jelly Bean Benitez. And I decided I was not going to have it. I mean, for one thing, they can remix stuff for the rest of eternity and charge you for it. Also, it doesn't represent the original vision of the artist. I'm really not interested in what some DJ wants to do with somebody else's work. So under that sort of thought process, I am not really interested in the Stacco Tracks things that the Beach Boys have done, where they've stripped off vocals or they've stripped off instruments. Doesn't really appeal to me. You get some of that here, and increasingly, as the vaults thin out, you get more and more of it on Beach Boy archival releases. Around the same time in the 1990s, the Warner Reprise Beach Boy albums were also released as twofers. But Warner Reprise did not include any bonus tracks on those, much to the disappointment of fans such as myself. You did get some rarity packages around this time. As they began to complete the reissues, the record companies sort of went back to releasing rarities discs apart from bonus tracks on CDs. Now, sort of an odd one from 1991 is this Lost and Found. Now, this is some of the recordings done with Height Morgan prior to the Beach Boys signing with Capitol, the sessions that produced their first single, Surfin'. And over the years, there have been many re-releases of this same material, each one claiming to be either a little better in sound quality than the prior one, or to have a little bit more material than the prior one, to have every sound that was ever on the tape. This pretty much covers everything that was done, seemingly, at those very early sessions. That's from 1991. Getting back to more mainstream Beach Boy archival releases, in 1998, with the Beach Boy catalog having been reissued on CD, you got the release of the Endless Harmony soundtrack. This album is all previously unreleased material, some of it very good, all from the reprise years 1970 to 1978. That was a companion piece to a documentary called Endless Harmony, oddly enough. Christmas of that year, 1998, saw the release of the Beach Boys' Ultimate Christmas CD. This included the previously released Beach Boy Christmas album from 1964, but also the 1977 Merry Christmas from the Beach Boys album that Reprise had rejected. You knew that thing was going to come out eventually. This is where it finally came out in 1998. I mean, it's a Christmas album. You can guess what it's like. It's not particularly good or particularly bad, just a Christmas album. The last release along these lines came in 2001 with Hawthorne, California. This is a double CD of previously unreleased material, and you can see how much is on here, but you can kind of tell they're starting to scrape the bottom of the barrel a little bit here. The stuff is not as high quality. There's some remixes, there's some things on here that are just passable as far as being unreleased previously. Over the years since then, there have been some other box set releases that included unreleased tracks among the greatest hits. When we started getting into the download period, actually I'll tell you, I stopped buying that stuff because I really didn't want to buy Good Vibrations in California Girls yet again. So I would just cherry pick off iTunes the previously unreleased items from those box sets and save some of my money. Now, we haven't talked about the Pet Sounds box set, we haven't talked about the Smile box set, and we haven't talked about all the releases that have come in the wake of the ruling in Europe regarding the 50-year expiration of copyright on unreleased material. I hope you've enjoyed this. Please like and subscribe, and we'll talk about those other items in a future episode. Bye.